Hi everyone, this is Ben from Oracle. Thanks for joining the Oracle Analytics Summit. Today I'm receiving one of our top Oracle Analytics leaders. This is Jeff Jordan from State of Maine. Jeff is going to show us how we implemented Oracle Analytics Cloud to automate all the analytics in the state of Maine. So thanks for joining and thanks for watching.
Hi, and welcome. My name is Jeff Jordan. I'm the Director of Enterprise Data Services for the state of Maine. I'd like to just jump right into our story about Oracle Analytics and our journey to the cloud. So we wanted to understand everything that was going on and how we could end up with a singular product that would meet the needs of state government data consumers better. And I've been using this slide for a while. The case for change, as a result of that analysis, there was a quote that one of the people I interviewed stuck with me forever. Mitch Boynton said to me, when my customer asks me a question, they've lost interest by the time I can provide an answer. And for us, one of the major pieces of that at first was we thought that had to do literally with database performance. So at first, we thought, well, we're going to make all the queries come back faster. But with more analysis, what we found was it was really a matter of function and the availability of the data that was needed. Not all of the data that was needed was present in the data warehouse. Some of the data was in some of the data that the analyst would need or the state data consumer would need, they had in a spreadsheet and they needed to merge it with data in the data warehouse. They didn't have a good way to do that other than to do one-off data extracts and to do all that merging of data together with Excel. So a big part of the early project was convincing the leaders in state government that we needed to invest in additional functionality, not just faster computers. From 2018 and to the end of 2019, we have spent a lot of time remodeling our data sets into an Oracle Analytics Kimball design data warehouse with several subject areas. And what you can see, the graph on the bottom is just showing the utilization over time. So beginning in May of 2019, we had very few people using Oracle Analytics. And by the midsummer this year, we're up to hundreds of people connecting every week in the different subject areas that they're using. The team of people that work with me every day are DBAs, they're ETL experts, data engineers, and IT professionals. So that is our primary responsibility. And when I talk about some challenges later, you might understand why I see those as challenges based on the composition of my team. And the other thing that will be a major point of this story is that I strongly believe that a cloud and an analytics journey has to be a strong partnership between those folks that label themselves as technologists in IT and those folks that label themselves as business people. It is analytics and data management is best done through a partnership of those two types of people. It works out better than if you try to do it in either one of the silos alone. We decided that we needed to deliver a 3-tier service model. We needed a tier that would allow the data analysts, the people that you think of primarily as building reports across state government, to have what we call a data analytics workbench. And we wanted to give them the tooling that would allow them to build out all the reports that are needed for the day-to-day operations of state government. And along the way, we wanted to increase, the visual nature of the data. We wanted to give them some of the more modern aspects of data and analytics and business intelligence that they were lacking from their 1995 implementation of a data warehouse that really only allowed them to extract row sets of data. And almost all of the reporting prior to this project for this administrative data was done via row sets. Everything is delivered in tabular format it was even common to see green bar reports still. So we've been putting a lot of effort into this data analytics workbench. It was the primary focus of the project, as you'll see. But the second tier of service that we wanted is actually to support the data consumption by the largest number of users. And that is what we're referring to as the information portal. So this is where we're going to find our dashboards and our automation and our query by simple navigation only. So if you want information about a certain subject, you can select the report you want via hyperlink, or you can be on a dashboard and you can select the drop downs. You can type in the things that you're interested in. And even with Oracle Analytics, we're getting towards that natural language processing where you can type in a search bar and search for the data that you're interested in, rather than just having the prompted navigation. So, but the information portal is to service those folks that aren't really interested in writing a query. They just want to know the answer to the question. Back to that original statement, by the time I can get the answer, my customer's lost interest, right? We wanted to make it very quick and easy to get to the data that you need to do your job. And then finally, an area where we're emerging now, having gotten through the majority of the rollout of the workbench and the information portal, is starting to have the tooling that will allow us to cash in on the promise of the value of data, which is to do that data science work, to do the machine learning, the forecasting, to look at what if scenarios, to make better decisions long term about complex problems. So the data science lab is a feature that, frankly, I wish we have spent more time on, but we had such a volume of data that we've been dealing with that we've spent the majority of our time in what most folks, if you've been around the Oracle Business Intelligence Suite for a long time, would think of as the classic view. One of the primary requirements that was given to me in 2015 by the leaders of the Department of Admin and Financial Services was they really wanted a single point of entry. They didn't like the fact that the data was being subsetted and extracted and duplicated over and over again. And they didn't like the fact that people didn't know where to go to find the answer that they were looking for. You know, if you wanted an answer on one thing, you had to go to one system. If you wanted an answer on something else, you had to go someplace else. And that created a level of complexity for the end user in state government that was unmanageable. It was hard to train to. And you were left with sort of an environment where the average data consumer in state government really only knew how to get what their predecessor knew how to get. So they may have been trained on this is how you run a certain report, and that was how they got that report or that information, but they didn't know how to get any other information. So the advantage of Oracle Analytics for us, Oracle Analytics Cloud, was to implement what we called the information portal and treat that sort of like a large building, where each one of the landing page is like the information desk. So when you show up at the information portal and you log into Oracle Analytics, you get that classic view. You get the drop-down menus and the side menus that allow you as an end user to choose from a lot of things that you can search for. You can go into the catalog and find the reports and dashboards that you're interested in. And then the analytics workbench, we didn't want you to have to leave the product to create new reports. So, and that's another strength I think that we're getting with this product, is that you can write in the product if you need to edit or change a report that you're looking at because it's missing an attribute or it's missing a field, or you want to add another calculation to add some context to a story, you can simply just select edit that report in the same place that you're viewing it, add the field, add the column, whatever you need to do, and then save it and run it again. And it's all in one place. You don't have to leave and come back. And finally, that data science lab is still there, because there is so much new data every day in state government. There's always a bottleneck to that central team. And the ability for the data consumer themselves to do some of that data preparation and get it into the warehouse for analysis with other data sets is a really key feature of Oracle Analytics Cloud that I think improves the partnership between IT and the business folks, if you will. We've been able to focus in on some of the most common reports and create enterprise level dashboards. And we also have created a user group, which allows us to share learning across the organization about how best to utilize the data and how best to display a profit and loss report so that it makes sense to the executives that you need to deliver information to. There's a few things that this slide kind of illustrates. It says answers are delivered faster. That was one of that key point that I wanted to get to. I showed you right at the beginning of the presentation. But there's a reduced reliance on IT, and that's something that I think it doesn't go to zero. We don't, and I don't think that it will ever go to zero, that the IT department isn't involved in your data analytics implementations, but it's reducing the reliance so that you can, as a data consumer, data analyst, data producer, work with your data without having to wait in the queue for when your priority ticket number comes up. And we really like that. I think it gives us a way to get new changes and new features into the system earlier. And then if some of the work that has been done by our data consumer user base is really enterprise in nature and would really benefit the rest of the enterprise, then the central IT team can look at that and prioritize making it or putting it into the operational system rather than just having it be a one-off for individual agency or user. We're really happy with the work on accessibility that Oracle has put into the product. And we've also put in some specific requests to Oracle to have some changes made to meet our 508 standards that Oracle has actually implemented in their roadmap. So that's been a nice experience. And then the last thing on this slide is that visual presentation. And the value of the data goes way up when you transition from all tabular reports, all extracted spreadsheets, and you start delivering charts and graphs and other types of visualizations that really point out the particular thing that you're looking at that, makes it jump off the page. This chart is highlighting the usage of what we called the GQL, which was the legacy data warehouse, and the usage of Oracle Analytics. So you can see this just goes back to January, but in January, our usage was, in favor of the GQL. And as we've continued to do work and work our change management plan, we've seen a growth in the use of Oracle Analytics until finally in May, we were able to really curtail the use of the old system. And now you still see a couple people connecting. We have left the legacy warehouse online, but it's really only available to use for a couple people to get us through year-end reporting in state government to make sure that the data all aligns as we transition from one reporting system to another. There's no surprises to be found. And I highlight another sort of quote from Mitch. The other day I called him and I said, how do you think it's going? And he said, all things considered, end users are learning to use a new tool and things are going great. We've been working on creating dashboards. We haven't yet released them, but we're close and we're excited. And he's very excited as the now director. He went from financial analyst to director in the interim. What we're starting to see is the scheduling process and the ability to send reports via email out of the Oracle Analytics system is a high value to our end users, and they're turning what used to be one-off processes that they had to do manually each week or each month into something that the system does for them. They set it and forget it, and they just get the data and the information that they need into either their hands or their consumers' hands on a regular basis, and they're seeing a lot of efficiency gain from the implementation of the tool, and that's a really gratifying thing because it's just yet another way that we're reaping value from our implementation. And this is an example of data that is not normally a part of our data warehouse, but this story is special to me because, one, it tells a really interesting story at the top here about just what the impact of driving to work is every day for the employee population of Maine state government. But this analysis was shared with the commissioner of Department of Admin and Finance. It has been referenced in some newspaper articles, and it's going into some research that it was being done by the governor's office around what remote work like and what the modern workforce should look like in state government in 2025. So some of this information is being used for some potentially interesting long-term strategies for state government and the workforce. As COVID-19 started to ramp up, we started to think about, well, what is the impact on our employees going to be? Will they use more sick time, for example? And this data analysis is showing you the number of employees who each day use sick time in some form or another in state government. So, and what you might have expected is there's a global pandemic. The use of sick time is going to go up fairly dramatically. But in reaction to the pandemic, we also sent the workforce to work remotely, typically from home, but although not always. And what we saw over the next first few months of the COVID pandemic was an actual decrease in the use of sick time every day as employees were staying home. They were isolating themselves so they weren't coming into the office and being exposed to COVID-19 or any other germs. And perhaps it's easier just to come to work if you don't feel well, but you're not deathly ill if you're working from home. So we were able to actually visually show that drop in the use of sick time in state government in response to the remote work. It's not all roses when you're pulling off a big project and you're moving, 1,000 data consumers into a new platform. We've done a lot of work on training and education, but I think probably not enough. And recently our steering team has met and we're going to do some additional investment. We're bringing on another resource to work on my team whose sole focus is going to be working with the user community on developing new reports and helping facilitate that user group that I talked about. We have in our data warehouse about 5 terabytes of data, a little over 1 billion rows of fact data. That's not including any of the dimensional data. And over 8,000 attributes related to those facts. So there's a little bit of composition, but it's primarily payroll data. And then there's a very lot of accounting data. We do a lot of timesheet analysis, and we also have, if we took it away from this volume, what would be a fairly large volume of budget and personnel data. We only have 6 people who work on the project. And they're the scope of the project was not to replace the reporting. It was to replace the system for the reporting and to prepare the data such that end users could make better use of it. But when you're replacing one system with another, then it's a 25-year-old system. There's 25 years of historical reporting that people are counting on being able to get. So we've had a lot of challenges where, not all of our data consumers have been savvy enough to produce their reports themselves. So again, that's where I was saying, I think if I were to do this again, I would put a little more focus and emphasis on the training budget at the start of the project. And I would also have a dedicated work stream set aside for how are we going to facilitate the recreation and the prioritization of the most important historical reports. in an ad hoc reporting system, it's very difficult to identify all of the reports. But I think we could have done more work around gathering the most frequently used and the most important reports, and done some more work around actually reproducing them. What happened, I think, a little bit on our project is there weren't enough people who understood what was possible in a data platform. So the requirements, what should be delivered, were sort of tailored to replacing what was already there, not what could it look like in the future. So another lesson I take away from the project is, if I were to go do this again, I'd spend a lot of time trying to get some of the most visible data consumers to understand what the industry has to offer and what the tool can do before we start getting into, okay, what do we need to make it do. I, I I would like to seed the imaginations a little more. I already talked about investing in training and mentorship. And I think the mentorship, what we found is that the IT staff understands the new tool. We understand how to use the tool. And the business staff understand the data, and they understand the questions they need to answer better. So if there's some partnership and mentorship between those two groups working together, I think we end up with better products. And that's where more time should be spent. Developing a partnership with the business, I tend to put executive sponsorship in that same vein. We've been very fortunate in Maine that both the state controller and the deputy commissioner for DAFs have been very supportive of this project, and they've helped us through some hard times along the way. And they stuck to it because they saw the value that was being delivered. And so when the hard times have come along on as they do in any project, they've had the fortitude to see it through and to help us find solutions. If one of the things I do regret, and I wish I had done, we had Oracle Analytics available and we didn't make use of it until after we got the data modeled. And I think that we could have been using the platform to allow people to do ad hoc analysis of their ungoverned data sets a lot earlier, had we done the training and mentorship piece ahead of time. And we could have delivered the governed data and the data model on the same schedule, but what happened in reality is we delayed the rollout of the platform until after we built the data model. Building the data model for 8,000 data elements took a very long time, so it delayed the value delivery of the project. And if you're to come behind and hear this presentation and say, I'm going to go implement a BI tool in my organization, I would have you take that away. Work on getting that value early, because as soon as you're paying for it, you want to be getting something out of it. And then communication, which is sort of, we've found that the communication had to be a two-way street. We had to hear about what was wanted. We had to talk about what was possible. And there needed to be a back and forth in order to get the best outcomes. We have gone from implementing Oracle Analytics and Oracle Database as a Service to we are now moving our database to the Autonomous Data Warehouse, and we're expecting to deliver that in the fourth quarter of 2020. The team's very hard at work on that, and I'm very hopeful about how that will enhance our ability to do data science work. The integration of Workday, there's a parallel project going on in state government to implement Workday as our HR system. It's been determined that the Workday data will need to be moved into the data warehouse to continue ongoing reporting. So there's a major work thread for us that we will be working on in the first, actually starting now, but into the first half of 2021. And then I said that we had some continuing education. We're bringing on some new staff to educate our end user community and our data consumers on using the tool and getting the maximum value out of the features of the tool. We're really excited to have, replaced the old. It's now, can we start really using the new features and maximizing the value that we're getting out of this platform? And then finally, just having the data more readily available than it's ever been. We're finding that we have data quality problems. We talked a little bit about the return to work survey, and one of the things the return to work survey uncovered was some data quality issues around the organizational structure, the who reports to who in the HR data. So that wraps up what I really had prepared to talk about. We'll be going into a question and answer now, and I'd be happy to talk to you about anything you want to ask with regard to this presentation. And if you don't want to stick around for question and answer, my contact information is here on the site, and you can reach out to me. I'm always happy to talk about government, data quality, data analytics, and data management. So thank you very much.
Wow, it was an amazing presentation. I'm looking forward to see more of our global Oracle Analytic leaders presenting. If you want to know more about this presentation, just ask your question in our Q&A. You can also complete the survey. And again, thanks for joining and thanks for watching.